Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Matrix Conversations and Transformations. It's the seminar series from the Department of Critical Theory and Social Justice in Los Angeles. I'm Malek Moazzam Dolat, and I'm joined by the co-organizers of the series, Professor Mary Christianakis, and our department chair, Professor Caroline Heldman. So today we're excited to be joined by a new colleague who is the organizer and host of the Ballroom series. That's Professor Claire Crawford. Professor Crawford's a PhD candidate at USC School of Political Science and International Relations. And this series is being presented in conjunction with a course she's teaching in the department, Ballroom, Renaissance, Pose, Work. And so before I turn things over to Professor Crawford, just a quick introduction to the Matrix in our third season for those of you who are new, but also for those of you who've been with us before, let you know what's going on. So the series itself focuses on, or the program, the Matrix, focuses on pressing current events and seeks to connect our community with innovative experts, scholars, artists, and the most effective activists in our communities. Now, our third season is going to center around 4 themes, and they're interconnected in various ways. The first one, the first theme is our series on indigeneity and settler colonialism, which starts February 9th. And we'll have shows on that on the 9th, 11th, 16th, and 18th, and we'll advertise those to you so you know what's going on this week. We're doing another series on technologies of surveillance and modes of resistance in relationship to digital technology, focusing on the Middle East and North Africa and Muslim groups. And related to that, we're working on white supremacy and global ethno-nationalism. So those are 2 related themes. And of course, the series we're kicking off today, we're very excited about, has the focus of Ballroom. So before I turn it over, note that we're using the webinar format, not the normal meeting format. That means if you want to submit questions, do it through the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to your questions. Okay, Professor Crawford, I turn it over to you.
Thank you for the kind introduction. So excited today to introduce, I'm going to say friend now, Julian, my coming friend, Professor Julian Kevon Glover, who is currently an assistant professor in the Department of Women's, Gender, and Sexuality Studies in the Department of Dance and Choreography at Virginia Commonwealth University. They hold degrees from Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, an MPA from Indiana University, and Northwestern University, where they earned a PhD in African American Studies. They were awarded a Franke Fellowship at Northwestern's Kaplan Institute for the Humanities, and their work appears in publications including South Atlantic Quarterly, Harvard Kennedy School LGBTQ Policy Journal, American Quarterly, Souls, and Text and Performance Quarterly. In 2019, she was inducted into the Edward A. Bouchet Graduate Honor Society at Yale University. So thank you again, Julian, Professor Glover, for coming for us. Turn it over to you. Talk your talk.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you for this great opportunity. I'm very excited for everybody to be here. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now let me just make sure you all can see my screen. Oh, let me resume this. Okay, great. You should be able to see my, okay, great. So I've got a presentation ready for you all. And I'm just gonna get right to it. First, it's important for me to start off by telling you a little bit about my childhood, because that definitely affects how I came to Ballroom. I grew up in Central Illinois, not Chicago, mind you, about 2.5 hours south of Chicago in a place called Bloomington Normal, Illinois. I was raised by my grandparents, my grandmother and step-grandfather, who were very Pentecostal, so hand clapping, foot stomping, tongue talking, Church of God in Christ. Our church was 72 miles away from where we lived, and we went to church 3 or 4 times a week. So when I tell you that I literally grew up in church, I mean every word. There was quite a bit of family secrets and silence around my birth, where my parents did not even tell me, were not honest about my birth until I was 22 years old. So technically I was adopted. And that just gives you a little bit of context for some of the issues that I had growing up, coming out very early. I was 14 years old, coming out as then gay. Certainly has changed since then, but I was always very queer, always very feminine, and never saw any issues with that. The issue came when other people would tell me about who I should be. And of course, high school was difficult, junior high was hard, being the only out kind of queer Black person certainly was difficult. And there were several times where I attempted to end my own life. One where I was very close to having a successful attempt. And to make a long story short, I was institutionalized for a very short amount of time. And it was in this kind of mental institution designed for young people struggling with mental illness, where I realized that there were so many voices who told me who to be, told me how to be. But I had to realize in that moment that sometimes the only voice that matters is your own. So with that kind of realization, I returned home only to be there for maybe maybe a year or so before I was briefly asked to leave my parents' home. And so at that point, I got a one-way ticket on Amtrak. Oh goodness, hold on, y'all. Y'all see my desktop and not. Let me see if I can fix this, y'all. Hold on 1 second. Okay, sorry, I didn't realize what was going on. Okay, great. Now this should be better. I'm switching between several things. So are you all able to see the presentation now? Okay, great. All right. Yeah, so I was just going through a number of things. You can see this now. Thank you for that, Claire. So I was saying I got kicked out and I got a one-way ticket on Amtrak to Chicago, where I would eventually have my introduction to ballroom. I must have looked like a really bewildered young person when I left the train station, Union Station. I was intercepted by 3 trans women who took me under their wing and gave me everything that I would need to survive during that time. And I put this picture up here because I wanted to just remind everybody and let everybody know that, I didn't have, my childhood wasn't wholly awful. There were some great times, and this picture, the women in this picture might be familiar. These are the women of Destiny's Child, in fact. Michelle was a dear family friend of mine and used to babysit me before. She got the call to go on tour with Beyonce and Kelly Rowland. So I just include that picture because it's fab. I mean, hello, Beyonce, all right? And also because it's a great memory for me and to me. So these 3 trans women provided, who I call my Charlie's Angels, provided my introduction to ballroom. And it was the first opportunity where I saw and were able to interact with other Black LGBTQIA+ people. And it really did not only change my life, but it really saved my life. So that's a little bit about my background and why I love a ballroom. So we're thinking about ballroom today, and I just wanted to provide a kind of overview of the scene. Of course, the scene is known for its spectacles, right? And it's known for being flashy, glitz and glamour filled. And that's important, that's a part of it, yes, but the system means a lot to those who are engaging or who are part of it, much more than what the spectacle will allow us to think. So for those who are not familiar, ballroom scene is a culture formation comprised of mostly urban LGBTQIA, Black and Latinx people who come together and compete at what are called balls as members of various houses for prizes that range from trophies to the largest grand prize that I know of to date is $100,000. Now, wouldn't that be nice to have cash like that? Anyway, the scene traces its roots to its origins, if you will, to the Harlem Renaissance, where about 100 years of history. That's some of its earliest iterations. And of course, it's been noted by well-known authors and poets like Langston Hughes, described attending what we now know as a ball. So that just gives you a little bit of historical context for the creation of the balls. So the ballroom has its own gender system as well. That is really important. We're going to go through that in a little bit. It also has its very own approach to kinship, space, and performance. So there are a number of different things that ballroom does and does well. And now I just wanted to give you all, for those who have never been, wanted to give you just a little taste, if you will, of what a ball is like. So we'll go right here. I remember. Hold on, let me see. I see it says my pausing is shared. Okay. I think this is right. Okay, sorry. I think I have to do this.
You have to unshare and reshare the proper tab.
So we should be good now.
Yeah, yes.
Skipping school to know what the culture was about.
I didn't have no.
You all hear the volume?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
Male role models. Ballroom filled that void of family.
My gender, my sexuality, my talent speaks for itself. I see myself as a household name, as a legend.
New York City, you wanted a ball, but for you to get the validation and the respect, you must walk.
Ballroom can knock you down. You have to stay on your A game.
They will chop you. Thank you, girl. Bye, Felicia.
What happened? What happened? Wait, security! Just get him out of here.
Realness, spoken with a twist. These are the girls that go like this. Cameras, light, 1, 2, 3. I am the girl that comes from me. You can dream big in ballroom, but any bitch can be replaced. Anybody.
Viceland, you're getting this right.
So that is a clip from a show on Viceland called My House. If you haven't seen it, I highly, highly, highly recommend it. It's great. It says a lot about important things about ballroom. Okay, so let me come back to this now. Okay, lovely. So that's just a taste of ballroom. Let me see. Okay, so I just wanted to spend some time delineating for you all the gender system in ballroom, because the first and most important thing to know is that within the ballroom scene, ballroom recognizes far beyond the binary gender system that is privileged in the West, which has only male and female, which we know could not be further from the truth. So in ballroom, there are 6 major categories, and this information is coming from the work of a scholar, Marlon Bailey, who's a mentor and advisor of mine, somebody who I love dearly, who has written the only surviving monograph about ballroom to date, called Butch Queens Up in Pumps. You can look that up if you're interested. So these are the 6 major categories. Femme queens, understood to be transgender women. Butch queens, understood to be gay men. Female figure, which is an interesting kind of category, / butch queens up in drags, as you can see here, butch queen up in drags there. There's that category, butches, a very contrived category, but a category nonetheless. Women and men in trade. So I think the best thing, in addition to describing each category, is to show you just a little clip of somebody who would certainly be considered exemplary of that particular category. So like we said, femme queens in ballroom are understood to be transgender women. And transgender women or femme queens are differentiated from female figure in that femme queens are understood to be transitioning medically. That is still the prevailing way that femme queens differentiate themselves from those who are butch queens up in drag or female figure. right? So it does denote some kind of medicalized transition. So there are many well-known folks in ballroom, perhaps amongst femme queens. Perhaps one of the most well-known is certainly one of my favorites as well. Her name is Leomi Maldonado, or Amazon Leomi. Let me show you just a clip of Leomi in action. So if nothing else, I hope that clip demonstrates why indeed it's the case that Leomi is so well known, not just for doing Micaelas and all of that, but she's well known for being quite inclusive of people in ballroom. And you see that she's known as La Mujer Maravillosa, or the Wonder Woman of Vogue, as her, what she was wearing really kind of demonstrates quite well. So that's one person in ballroom who's known as a femme queen, well-known femme queen. Now there's the next category, which we have here. Make sure you can see this. Okay, yes, butch queens. Now, I'll show you just another clip of a butch queen, which, like I said, is a gay man. Many times cisgender, but it really just means a gay man, okay? Refers to that. I'll show you another favorite of mine. This is Ricky. He is an icon in the scene. Let's watch him perform. And this particular performance, he had not been out to perform in several years, and then came out of nowhere with a performance just like a legend.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2. Motherfucking glove. The performance legend is in the house. Over 2 years you haven't seen her in active performance, and she's back. Gorgeous legend of Vogue. Gorgeous legend of Vogue. This is a legend that doesn't need a chance. Just give it a beat and watch her rip the runway. Legend, 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 Ricky, Ricky, Ricky. The legend of Ricky. She's unbothered. I am here. Sorry, push you back. Judges for the legendary Ricky.
One of my very, very, very favorite performers of all time. Clearly, everybody is doing the performance style that is privileged in ballroom called Vogue. There's quite a bit to say about that, but of course, that's one of the things that people know most about ballroom. So I wanted to spend a bit of time focusing on other really, really equally important aspects. So now you'll see another person who this performance really, really catapulted this person into being well known. They're participating in what's called the female figure category, like we were discussing earlier, female figure, butch queen up in drags. This person is more a butch queen up in drags, but again, the kind of categories in the ballroom are just a bit porous, where they're able to include a range of people with different gender embodiments. It's not a panacea, though, at the same time. certainly more expansive than what is privileged in our white Western world, but not a panacea. So this is a glimpse into one very, very, very legendary performance from Star Revlon. And you'll notice where she begins the performance, not on the stage as the previous person, but at the top of the stairs. Enjoy. So you all can see just from that performance alone how she might be well known in ballroom. It's quite difficult for anybody, regardless of how well you know the art form of Vogue, to Vogue on stairs. And not only did she Vogue on stairs, she Vogue down the stairs. So quite a well-known performance there. So the next category are butches, are understood to be trans men. So this is just a brief clip of a category for trans men called trans man realness. So this is KT Escada.
This is the new standard. And sure, you cannot deny this. So now, trans across the board.
So you can see, I've chosen these clips quite carefully. I wanted you all to get a sense of how involved audiences are in ballroom and how well they can respond to folks who are really turning the categories, whatever the category might be. So that's that. And then two more categories to go. This is going to be women's performance, and that's the next category. Women, these are understood to be cisgender women who bring it in all kinds of ways, in all kinds of categories. Largely in ballroom, they'll get their own kind of category at an actual ball. And this is some of the magic that can happen in these categories. Enjoy. So you can see just another great example of somebody just turning a category. And then the last category understood to be men who are more masculine centered or trade. We know that that term is often used, misused, and abused, and it definitely comes from ballroom. It's a kind of category that refers to people who are largely assigned male at birth who adopt very masculine kinds of personas. So this is a clip from a ball, one of the same balls that I showed you earlier. And this is folks who are tasked in this category, thug realness, with emulating or embodying a thug, right? And their goal is to sell to the judges that they are, to convince them, we call it in ballroom, to sell it to the judge, that they are indeed a thug. So let's just take a brief look at this.
Okay, score him. Scores. Is it realness? Thug realness. Is he a thug? Real? Unspookable? Can't get it. Brittany, Arnold scores 10s. Next one. Let's go. We're gonna try to move this fast. We're just going for realness. Either you see it or you don't. Shouldn't take a long time. Right. Let's go. 10s. If I don't see a mask, I'm gonna automatically think that you're giving 10s.
Who's a sexy bitch up here?
10s across.
Who that sexy bitch up there?
Okay, just wanted to give you all just a little glimpse of what that looks like, okay? So let me get back to the other screen. Now, I think we're all good. Great. Okay, so another thing that's really important in ballroom is the way that ballroom deals with kinship. So we know that the Black families, it's a bit of, in the United States, even to say Black families is a bit of a farce. I just got done teaching my undergraduate students here at VCU about the particular ways that under the conditions of slavery in which Black people were brought to the United States, one of the very first things that Black people were stripped of is our relationship to family, what scholars call natal alienation. It is to say that there were specific technologies that slave owners used to forcibly separate families so as to produce a kind of setting to where Black bodies could be understood to be property that you buy and sell at any time. So again, I want to start there, and then, because that gives the correct kind of context to understand why folks in ballroom, what they do around kinship is so important. It really is responding to several hundred years of forced dispersal, of natal alienation, and these kinds of things. And so in ballroom, kinship is largely understood through houses. So you come into ballroom and you can join a house. And the way that people are able to join houses varies from house to house. And these are essentially teams. And in order for you to really walk a ball, you really do need to be part of a house. You don't have to be. There's another category called 007, which is a play on the James Bond being a kind of like lone agent. It means somebody who is without a house, or a solo agent, you could say, or a free agent rather. So houses, they have many different names. Many of them we might be familiar with because a lot of the names of the houses come from well-known fashion houses. Okay, so there are some prominent examples. The now former House of Mizrahi, the House of Balenciaga. Okay, not just named after fashion houses, but also in some cases, they're named after or in honor of magazines. So you also have the House of Ebony, right? Named after the legendary Black publication in the United States, Ebony magazine. Okay, so houses play a very important role in ballroom. They provide the primary structure for members to be part of the scene. There are many roles that people play in houses, but they're still led by house mothers and house fathers. So it's important here to note that a house mother, house mothers and house fathers, mothers especially, do not have a pre-designated gender embodiment. So that's to say that a butch queen can serve as a house mother. Okay, house fathers, I've seen fewer house fathers who are not butch queens or men, but I'm sure that there are several who I'm likely forgetting. So I just wanted to say that so we can kind of get a accurate picture of house mothers and house fathers, and to also know that they provide their house children with a number of different things, especially in terms of helping folks get ready to attend a ball, getting their effect together, their look, what we call in ballroom an effect, get their effect together for the categories that they're walking, help train them for the ones who are going to be competing in the performance categories. So teach them how to vogue in whatever way, shape, or form they're able to do that, whatever the category calls for. So that's also important to know about houses and those who lead each house. So there are a number of other things, though, that the kinship structure in ballroom through houses provides. One, it enables survival. When I say survival here, I mean physiological survival, right? Giving us access to the very basic human needs that we have: shelter, food, clothing, etc. I'll remind you, you'll be reminded about how my angels really provided me with these kinds of things at a young age, such that I was able to grow and develop, and while having what I needed to do that. So they also provide individual emotional, mental, financial, and spiritual support and protection. And because ballroom is a phenomenon that it's a culture formation that is all over the world now, through houses, ballroom has been able to develop really robust networks of care, to where if you're traveling to a city, to a different city from where you live, and you're part of a house, it is very likely the case that you would be able to get in contact with house members who are in that city and meet up with them should you choose to while you're there. So that's important, that it provides a really robust network. So it's not, it's just to say that the houses are, those houses that are in many different cities all across the nation and the world, they provide quite a bit to house members. And like we were saying earlier, like I started this slide, they really respond and redefine heteronormative connotations of family wholesale. Like I was saying, there's so many folks in ballroom whose own families reject us for a number of reasons, and we find and create family and discover that family is indeed a choice. Family is indeed a doing, and we many times can discover that in ballroom. Ballroom really does help quite a bit. We also in ballroom deal with and approach space and performance in very different manners. One of the things that is very particular to ballroom is that ballroom really does resist physical fixity or permanence. What do I mean by that? That is to say that ballroom, you're going to be hard pressed anywhere in the world to go and find a neighborhood where they have balls, okay? Or a physical building where all the balls are held, where its primary purpose is to hold balls. Because ballroom has never really been able to, folks in the scene have never really been able to rely on any kind of fixed or concretized building or edifice to have a ball. So it's to say also that balls can really pop up anywhere. You all might have seen some of the clips that balls were popping up at what appeared to be gymnasiums in some case, event venues and others. I've seen several balls at in the conference rooms attached to hotels. So ball, and I've also been to a ball that happened in a parking lot once the host venue pulled out the last minute after discovering what the people who booked the place were going to do, what their plans were to have a ball. They didn't want these folks here, okay? So they decided to shut down their place, but folks just decided to have the ball in the parking lot, and it was one of my favorites that I can remember. So that's how we deal with space differently in ballroom. We acknowledge, affirm, and uplift and celebrate a wide variety of Black queer embodiments here. I think that ballroom has a lot to say in that regard, the kind of celebration. And the way that we understand performance is in large part reflects a very kind of capacious understanding of performance and what it means to honor somebody. So the best example that I can think of about performance and how performance might celebrate, uplift, affirm, and acknowledge Black queer embodiments is through what's called LSS. This happens at the beginning of every ball. It's called Legends, Statements, and Stars. And it is a time at the beginning of every ball where the commentator will recognize the individual contributions of people in ballroom who have become well-known for whatever reason. Sometimes it is, many times it's because of their performance in particular categories. Also, there are those who do great activist work whose are uplifted in ballroom as well. So there are just a number of different reasons why somebody would be called out for LSS. And the LSS, Legend, Statements, and Stars, those are all different categories that you can ratchet up as given the length of time that you're in ballroom. So the longer you're in ballroom, you'll start as a star, and then you can become a statement, and then you can become a legend after a number of years and significant contribution. And then the final kind of designation, which supersedes all three of the categories, is the deeming of what's called an icon in ballroom. Several of the people who I showed you already are deemed to be icons. These are people who are Hall of Famers. These are folks who have paved the way for ballroom to be what it is that we know it to be today. So the way that we deal with performance here also aids in resistance to all kinds of violence. And when I say violence there, I don't just mean physical violence, but I mean all the spiritual, emotional kinds of violence as well that people in ballroom find ourselves really facing quite a bit simply for existing in a world that remains very hostile to our very being. Another important thing that ballroom does is it provides a way or provides room for mutual recognition. What do I mean by that? I have a dear friend, Justin C. Moore, who says that so much about desire and love are about recognition. Well then, to be recognized by people who have very similar social locations as you may certainly be an act, not just an act of love, but it may be something that really has the potential to not just affirm one's existence, but give a person a reason to continue living. It is hard in the world to be Black and queer in any way with any embodiment. So to come to a space that really can provide mutual recognition really can enhance somebody's ability to be resilient, to get up every morning and to face the struggles that we do anytime we leave our homes. So we also in ballroom create space through vernacular. So there are a number, a cadre really, of terms that people have started using quite regularly that find their origins in ballroom. I'm sure people in the audience can think of a few. I'll just give you just a couple to jog your memories. What's the tea? Or that's tea. You've heard that before. That comes from ballroom. A kiki, to have a ball, to enjoy oneself, right? That comes from ballroom. Shade. That's shady. Or, ooh, that's shady. This person is shady. The whole art of shade comes from ballroom. Okay, and there's another one that is one of my favorites. And because ballroom has reappropriated the word away or in direct opposition to its original meaning. And that is the word cunt, C-U-N-T, where in ballroom, we know what that word means in the larger world. No need to even delve into it. We know what that word means, but in ballroom, cunt is the ultimate kind of compliment. It denotes somebody's femininity, and it says to that person that they have achieved a kind of ultra feminine embodiment. It is the utmost compliment possible, Okay, so that just gives you a little bit in terms of vernacular or language, how folks in ballroom create space for one another to be the best that we possibly can, like we're saying, in a world that really, really does seek to destroy and annihilate us in many different kinds of ways, okay? So I wanted to just make sure I left enough time for questions, so I will stop there and hopefully we can chat now. So thank you so much.
Julian, for giving us that very informative, just breakdown, walkthrough. Yes, got people clapping loudly in the questions too and the answer. Yeah, no, thank you for that. I think something to start with, particularly also in thinking about the class, a lot of us only come to ballroom through consumption, right? So thinking about the role, particularly how we come to spectatorship. So how Paris is Burning is a particular person's presentation of ballroom. And then of course now Pose, and then you think, even when you think about RuPaul's use, how that intersects with it. And then now, you know, we have the show Legendary, right? Which also presents to us a particular way. Like, how do we deal with our roles as a spectator, right? But also honoring to all the things that you say ballroom is, right? And this act of resilience, giving credit, not appropriating. So just kind of starting there. What do you think?
So this is a great question. And this is part of the reason why I still love doing this kind of work, because I think it's quite easy for folks to come in and out of different ballroom activities, to just kind of see the spectacle, you know, marvel at it and then leave. But I think a big part of understanding ballroom is being educated about ballroom beyond what you're just simply seeing with your eyes, okay? And at the same time, a part of understanding ballroom is being able to understand actually what you see with your eyes, okay? So I went through, you know, this presentation to give folks a very kind of clear understanding about very specific delineations that people make in ballroom, and as a way to, and for me, that's a way that people can demonstrate a particular kind of respect for ballroom and for what people are doing in here. You know, people in ballroom, we're not just, you know, voguing for the sake of voguing all the time. For many people, voguing is like a way that we tell our stories in our stories of being in a world that really does seek to kill us at every moment, and also not just kill us, but tells us implicitly that our lives have no meaning, that our lives are meaningless, that our lives have no value. Certainly, ballroom has a lot to teach and continues to teach the world a lot, all right? I mean, how much from ballroom, how much culture from ballroom, you know, has gotten out to the kind of mainstream, right? I can think of several different people who might not even have careers if it weren't for the kinds of contributions of folks in ballroom, right? So I think it's really important that people like know more than just about voguing, okay? You see, I could talk all about voguing. That could be a whole separate kind of lecture. But you see, I did not talk about voguing to start, okay? Because it's just that important that people know beyond voguing what is being done, the important life-saving work, right, that is being done in ballroom. So I'll stop there. Because you mentioned some other things we can get into in a minute, but we stop there.
I'm gonna like combine some of the questions here too that from the audience. So Sarah asks, how do you feel about ballroom styles being used in more corporate, hyper-produced settings like RuPaul's Drag Race? And I think that can also be combined with thinking about, is Pose from Alejandra, do you think it is a good representation of ballroom life?
I love this question. Thank you. I do my best to be partial. I have big feelings about these two shows. And for me, they exist. It's great to talk about them together. RuPaul's Drag Race and with Pose, okay? Because they embody very different orientations, very different approaches to ballroom, where, is it, what might we say, the debate around, is it appropriation? And the professor who says this all the time. Is it appropriation or is it appreciation? Okay, well, I would say that for RuPaul's Drag Race, it has always been appropriation. And the reason why I say Drag Race has always been an appropriation of ballroom is that with all the different challenges they have had, they have never once brought in somebody who is well known in ballroom, like Leomi. Leomi has a long list of credits, okay, in terms of like dance. I mean, she's done major campaigns for Nike a few years ago. She was the face of their LGBT Pride Month campaign, right? So she's done very high profile things. She's choreographed and been in videos with Willow Smith. I mean, the list just goes on and on. And RuPaul's Drag Race somehow has decided, with all of the dancing challenges that they give their queens, never to bring on anybody from ballroom. Now, to be fair, they have brought on a ballroom DJ. Okay, maybe two, in fact, now. I remember John Allure has been on. I don't know if Mike Q has been on yet. So I'll give them some credit there. But from they're kind of like the shade challenge, challenge they do, the reading challenge that they do every single season, from that to, not teaching everybody on the show about ballroom and its actual history. To me, they do a huge injustice to ballroom through really giving a very messy kind of representation of what it is. And I just watched the most recent episode of Drag Race just yesterday, and I just had to go like this when I was seeing folks attempt to vote.
Yes.
Okay, and at this point, there are so many folks who have been lauded for their attempts. It's a mess. Now, Pose, on the other hand, it's important to mention that Pose is the show that it is today, only because it started with a coup. When Ryan Murphy first got the writer's room together, there was nobody from ballroom in the writer's room. So several well-known people in ballroom said, you will not produce another show about us without us. They stormed the writer's room and convinced folks in there to bring on trans women of color writers. So that's one of the reasons why now, the show has been produced the way that it is, with trans women of color being at the center and at the forefront, really, of the show, even in the writers' room, right? Janet Mock is just one of the writers for the show. There are several others as well. So, from that angle, they do quite a bit more justice to preserving the spirit of ballroom than RuPaul's Drag Race in 13 years, because 13 seasons now, in 13 years that they have been able to do, or have chosen to do. Because for me, what they're doing is very much a choice, where they could choose to do what Pose did and really give very complex and sometimes contradictory depictions of Black queer life, right? We know that the first two seasons, some of the stories were based on and in conversation with the very well-known documentary Paris is Burning, right? Produced by Yale MFA grad Jenny Livingston. About ballroom. So there are several storylines that are in conversation with that. So to me, they do a much better job of accurately representing ballroom at that particular time period. Because of course we know that is very much a period piece in that way. And we know that from the point that they are engaging ballroom to now, it looks quite different. But yes, two very different examples. Honestly, what not to do, and over here, something to be lauded.
Thank you. No, so to keep kind of going, something that you brought up a lot is thinking about the ballroom scene and thinking about who's present and how the interaction, just to plug our future presenter, Michael Roberson, described the church, right? So thinking about ballroom space as a church and how you need that congregation, right? So the idea that you need the people in the audience. So how would you say, like, particularly, how can we participate almost as audience members in this like lauding as we continue on in our journey in the series, but also like in our studies and interests in ballroom?
Well, yeah, it's a really great question. I think that it's to say, so much about spirituality, right? And I love thinking about ballroom as a kind of spiritual place. With my own kind of like church trauma, I might not say church, but it certainly is like a spiritual place where people go. And for me, like my own kind of understanding of spirituality is supposed to be all about communing with oneself,
Right.
all about kind of critical self-reflection, such that we can individually be better to ourselves so that we can be better to other people and develop, what Audre Lorde might call a very different relational ethic. Yeah. So for me, ballroom, and for folks who are coming to ballroom, who are brand new or who've been in it for a while, the best thing I feel like people can do is certainly really pay attention to why why you want to go to a ball, and what does it tell you about yourself? Because of the spectacle of ballroom, I think that many times people can easily go to the ball, see everything, consume it, and then be like, that was great. And sometimes I've seen folks leaving, folks who are not Black or Latinx leave balls, okay, and come out and move their purse to the other side of their arm when they see too many Black folks walking around, right? So again, to me, that's a kind of very clear kind of example to say, you have not learned anything about yourself in these places. Where for me, what you see in ballroom is you see people who have the courage to be themselves in all of their complexity, in all of their contradiction, and as capacious as they are in terms of changing embodiments, right? So to come in and to not engage in that way as well is for me to do a kind of violence to the space that does not really enhance one's own kind of spiritual journey in understanding, right? Because again, like we said about Vogue is not just about, hitting all the moves and just executing it. No, you're telling your story through movement, right? The most well-known Voguers are those who you could put burlap sacks on them, cover up their faces, and just from their movements alone, you would know exactly who it is, because their story is just that clear. Their story is just that lucid, right? So for me, that is a way that, that is a kind of goal, if you will, that I think everybody who is coming to ballroom should have.
Julian, I'm wondering if we could talk a little bit about kinship and what that might mean for LGBTQ plus youth.
Yes.
Who are experiencing an inordinate amount of violence and alienation, not only now in this moment, right, as people are isolated, but ongoing for generations. Can you talk a little bit about the kinship and the ways in which family and houses work with youth?
Mm-hmm. So yeah, this is a great question. Let me say this, that I think that ballroom has been so dedicated to working with and for youth, that there have been several kind of subsets, if you will, within ballroom that have been created. So what I have, all the clips that I showed you are from what's understood to be the mainstream kind of ballroom scene. But there are subsets within ballroom. There's something called the Kiki scene that some of you might be familiar with. And that is a scene that is really, it's a subset of ballroom. That's a scene that's really like very directly dedicated to meeting the needs, to learning about and meeting the needs of youth. And when I say youth, I really do mean folks who are 18 and as young as 11 and 10 and 11. Okay, there are just that many youth that really need ballroom, for whom ballroom can provide a very clear sense of a very clear sense of self and community. So I think that that's one way. And, you know, I did my doctoral dissertation work in Chicago. And in Chicago, they don't necessarily have Kiki scene, they have literally what's called a family scene, right? And that is akin to the Kiki scene in that its focus is really largely on serving, meeting the needs of LGBT youth. There are also a number of organizations across the country that specifically cater to LGBTQIA+ youth who are interested in ballroom, right? And I can think of somebody who serves as choreographer and I want to say a producer as well on Pose, the icon Twiggy Poochie Garçon, okay? They work for the True Colors Fund in New York City. So that's just one example of a whole organization headed by somebody who is well known in ballroom that really does seek to meet the needs of LGBTQIA youth. It's a great question, Mary. Great, great question.
Thank you.
One more thing I will say, because it's important. One of the kinds of activities that I think is just absolutely brilliant that I've seen folks in my time all across the country in ballroom do is demonstrate the kinds of transferable skills that people can develop in ballroom. So I'll give you an example. It takes, as you all might think, it takes a lot of skill and time and logistical knowledge to put a ball together. Yet there are some who, so much time that it really does become a kind of like skill that people develop. Now, I've seen folks in ballroom, I'm thinking of a person called Jay Blonnet, an icon as well, who said something that was just like, duh, Julian, it makes so much sense. It's talking about how those who make their name hosting or throwing balls, how that is a skill that they should definitely put on their resume, right? And how they have supported people who realize through producing balls that they have a passion for event planning. Right? So you can turn, you know, skills that you learn in ballroom into, well, these become transferable skills. So you can use them in or beyond ballroom, which is a very kind of life-saving kind of thing. And it really reminds me of a kind of theorization that my dissertation was dealing with. And that is a kind of theorization of embodied knowledge. What do I mean when I say that? Is to say the harnessing of lived experiences of racial, gender, sexual, and class subjugation, which are transformed into strategies, tactics, and tools by which individuals acquire the necessary human and material resources for survival in a world that remains hell-bent on our annihilation. So to me, ballroom, no other community does it better than ballroom. No other community does a better job of really engaging embodied knowledge than ballroom.
Okay, well, we're out of time. We've run out of time, which is terrible because I want to do this for hours and hours. You're amazing. Thank you so much. So you put up that slide with your contact information. If people have questions, follow-up questions, is it okay if they contact you?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'd love to hear from people. So.
Yeah. That's wonderful. And it's so great to hear that you'll be visiting our students in Professor Crawford's classroom. That's so great. So I just want to say thank you to Professor Glover, to our audience, to everyone, and thank you so much for coming. And we'll provide some follow-up here. Perhaps we can provide your website and all that to the people who attended. Would that be okay?
Wonderful,
okay.
Thank you.
Professor Crawford, any closing words?
No, just thank you to Professor Glover for giving us the first layout, starting off our series with your knowledge, bringing yourself and lived experience into the space. Looking forward to seeing everybody as we continue on. We will be back with the Ballroom series on February 25th with Michael Roberson, who will take us to church literally through Ballroom. So looking forward to that.
Amazing spirit. So excited.
Okay.
And thank you all again.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, Dr. Glover.
Thank you so much. Have a good one, everybody. See you next week. Bye-bye.